Omkar Tamhan has completed 125 titles as a sound engineer and entrepreneur in the Indian film industry. He co-founded Mariano Audio Post Services and the Audio Guys Institute. He's the youngest Dolby Atmos mastering consultant. Namaste. This is the Neumann Home Studio Academy India Edition, Season 2. I'm Meghdeep Bose, and I bring you some of the most phenomenal people from the music industry and the audio industry of India. It's absolutely not just a privilege, but it's also a very exciting thing today because we know you as a sound engineer, a musician, an educationist, an entrepreneur. And I would like to tell my viewers that it is not just these designations, but with so many designations, you are probably the only person I know of the age you are. and I think at this stage of life, I think it is commendable as of what you've achieved so far.
Thank you.
And I think you being on this series will be a great motivation for all the viewers who are especially aspiring music producers and engineers. So thank you for coming on this show.
Thank you so much for those humble words. I don't know if I've really earned a lot of them that you said. I mean, yeah,
So jumping onto the discussion, the very first, because you've been very active in the film post works, and because you are also a musician, and you have been, shunting between music engineering as well as film post engineering. So there's a lot of perspective, a lot of wide perspective that comes into picture. I've been talking to our guests about the integrity of sound and music in today's time.
Okay.
And we've discussed about how sonics are now inseparable with the writing process of music. Because you've been very active on the film post side and you've been educating the upcoming musicians and engineers, we would like to know your take on this particular aspect of music and film and sound, that how these two have come together, and how have you been treading these waters?
So, first of all, it's a very valid and very relevant point in today's day and age. I mainly have two different perspectives, and one is the professional side of things, of how things are actually being happening in the industry today, and the second is the educator angle, like what we are trying to impart for the next generation to come. The current scenario in the industry definitely is that sonics play a very, very major role. Especially in film, we are at a stage right now where the sound design, the non-musical part of a film and its musical part have kind of collided like never before. There are several films that have released in the past 3-4 years only that show excellence in other departments like editing, sound design, dubbing, that are completely related and completely are picking cues from music itself.
Correct.
So they are sourcing their accents, their rhythm, their feel, their flow, all on the basis of the composition of the music. Films used to do that back in the day, but they were more as experimental. Now it's becoming something that's more broad stream. We've worked on films with great composers who have given first compositions to us while the reels were getting cut, and there's been a lot of discussion going on where we are tracking ambience and laying ambience according to the instrumentation, trying to make sure that none of our sounds kind of get in the way of music.
Correct.
And kind of also thinking of ambience at sometimes as a pad, how we kind of think of pads and strings and some supporting layers in music. So film guys have also started thinking in those sense, how
in textural ways.
Like how a music producer kind of thinks, but minus like the musical theoretical part of it, strictly coming from a sound background. So that is one major part where it's colliding. As an educator, we have been pushing this entire integrity of sound in current times, in terms of not just keeping in mind with sound and music, but sound by itself, because considering how music is being produced right now versus 10 years back, and if we kind of map a graph of where it was and how it's been doing now, we can kind of get an idea of what it's going to be in the next decade. And I have bet all my cards on music is not a thing of studios anymore.
Correct.
Music is a thing of pure emotion.
Correct.
It should not matter where you are. You should have the access to create music anywhere and everywhere.
Correct.
And for that, a lot of people, a lot of artists have, they've started out with voice memos that have ended up in final tracks.
Yes.
They have dubbed in railway stations, railway platforms, and that became a part of the ambience of the
Correct.
final music. They've done a lot of experimentations like that. But we kind of always seem to underline and kind of undermine the fact that, it was that point that they had access to technology through which they could get that idea captured and recorded. So my entire angle as an educator is to make sure, to give the students that awareness of quality. Instead of anticipating them that they should really work hard and go to a studio, yes, it has its pros and cons, but we should never kind of forget that we are in a generation right now where equipment's quality plays a much bigger role than a physical facility.
Correct.
We need to have capability of remote accessibility.
Correct.
With the advent of softwares, multiple things, it should be just that you can just pick up the microphone you love, pick up the mobile gear that you love, just take a laptop and go to any place in the world and get the musician of your choice. Get that art that you want. And I feel that's a great level of access. Pretty much even like how mics have become in nowadays. How quiet they are with their noise floors and with the signal to noise ratio. The amount of sound cards that have preamps inbuilt that can handle these mics have also become so much more portable. So yeah, my entire angle as an educator has always been that get to know your microphones, right? Get to know the different types of microphones, understand how the recording works, because the post is anticipated that yes, you will be working out of your studio. It might be a bedroom, it might be a room in your house, it might be a small facility, or it might be a large facility. The facility does not matter, but as long as you get your source right with the knowledge and the theory that you have learned, you can really shape your own palette. And that is the true expression of any music producer and director, I feel.
I think the focus, I think your focus as an educationist, what I gather is ensuring that the individual / artist focuses on capturing the emotion.
Yes.
Focuses on, conveying the right emotion, conveying
Absolutely.
their art form, rather than being compulsive about technology and being compulsive about recording something in a particular facility, or because there have been several times where the scratch vocals in a song have been actually made as the final ones. We've just taken them. So I think that's amazing. And also coming back to the film post perspective, in the past few years we've seen this tremendous growth, or maybe a very strong trend of texture-based music.
Yeah.
Where if we see, especially when the OTTs took over the market, or when the OTTs started growing, we saw this strong branding in terms of filmmaking. Yeah. Where, or if not branding, the correct word would be packaging. So we've seen this sudden rise in a particular genre of packaging, where the music when the scores of films has turned very textural and very underscored and very non-melodic, very I mean, to state it more precisely, something that does not have a lot of changeovers, that does not change from chapter to chapter.
Yeah, something is just like omnipresent in the scene.
Yes, I think something that just adds a layer to what's happening. And I think I relate to a scene from Harry Potter where they enter this chamber of a big dog, a three-faced dog, and suddenly the glockenspiels they shut. And they say that why there's so much of silence, because we didn't realize that there was a glockenspiel playing until it stopped. So I think a similar trend we've seen in our films, in the way the films are being made, especially for the OTTs, where the whole independent side of films. How, as an educationist, and how as someone who has been on the forefront of some of the most pivotal projects of Indian cinema, how have you steered through these things, both in terms of being on the job for it, in terms of sound,
Yeah.
as well as training students on it? How do you, what has been your way of going through these particular trends, and how have you acclimatized yourself? How have you adapted yourself into these trends? What has been the procedure?
So, main difference, as you said, if you are considering, the underlying music as a trend graph, sound again reacts to music because, dialogues and music make up pretty much the majority structure of any film. If we are now taking away rhythmic elements, that gives more scope for a lot of things like Foley, our stock effects to kind of seep in through, not be too over the loud, but also be audible, be present, add to the scene, kind of play with the music to its advantages. Whereas if you consider something that was like a decade old or something, even today, if you're making, but kind of in the retro feel where it has a lot of rhythmic elements, every cuts are highlighted, every edit is highlighted. So that kind of packs the soundscape of a film already. So then the sound design or the sound approach to films, the post approach to films becomes very minimalistic. Making the dialogues audible, making sure nothing gets eaten up, maybe ducking the Foley a little too less just so that the music can cut through. So there are trade-offs every time that happens. So mainly the way to steer it is also understanding. Both as professionals here, I don't think like there's any I have a singular perspective, both professionally and as an educator, is just to have awareness of all departments. People are growing. There is no two ways about it. People will always grow. That's pretty much how, education, art, anything in this world works, is that people have to grow, have to learn something new every day. As we are enthusiasts, we keep, I keep calling you for something, and, we always have a little chit chat and kind of exploring new ideas. There is no need for us. If people kind of go in the conversation.
I call you more for doubts.
I mean, and I don't pick up your call sometimes. So, but that's the thing. Like, if, we want to brand that way, we could say that, we know, there is no need for us to grow more. But that's not how it works, that's pretty much not how any passion works. We really need to get out there, learn every day. So we need to understand if we are passionate about our arts. There are so many departments in a film. Yeah. To make a film, there are hundreds and hundreds of people. Every single person is passionate. That's the reason why they are a part of this industry. That means every single person is getting up every single day and trying to learn something new. So if we kind of have a very straight, singular view to things, we will start getting disconnected with what other fields are doing. We'll not know what kind of power we have, that, a new technology, let's say at filmmaking or, DOP level has come that might actually help us. And people sometimes, have that disjoint, like, how can visuals help music? But they do. 20 years back,
100%.
20 years back, the color representation was not that great.
Correct.
Yeah, you could not see 4K movies on a phone. Now you can.
Correct.
Speaking strictly in sound, that just means that we have that much level of detailing to be done. We are one step closer to realism. So if the visual is, the sound should also be. Similarly with music, the transitions, the way of editing has changed. That has also instigated a change in how musicians approach a film. How you might think for a scene has a lot to do with the style of editing, the taste of editing.
Correct.
The technicalities as well involved in it has become, because VFX, let's say, has become grown out so much in this decade. That gives you so much more scope in fiction. Fiction back in the day was much more minimal. So every little change kind of instigates, a change of workflow on your own end. And I wouldn't say that's as much as change as it is growth. So just having general awareness, you don't need to steer it necessarily. If you're aware, you'll slowly adapt. Because you yourself will be a curious soul. Like, I'm very excited on what new softwares and what new updates editors get.
Correct.
Yeah. Because again, if I pinpoint a specific example, edit conforming, it was a pain for like almost a decade. Edits at the 11th hour is something that is not welcome.
It's still a pain for musicians because...
Yeah, I mean, I totally feel you guys.
Bar to bar.
Yeah, the pulse. But for us, it's become a little more easier. And this is in the last 2-3 years that I've come across softwares. And this is by no means, that, people are already using it. Some of my really good friends based out here in Mumbai themselves, they kind of showed me like, oh, this is something that, we have tried working our edits with. Oh, this is something we have tried conforming our session with. And, 1+1 kind of changes your entire workflow. Now, the way I edit has been completely different. As opposed to 2 years back. 2 years back, I was again in that whole manual editing, watching the frame, syncing it. Now it's taken a little bit of an automation process. It just means that, I have changed my workflow. Agreed, yes. I'll never think about edits the same way.
Correct.
I'll not worry about edits the same way. My sessions will change. The way of presentation will change. The outlook to things will change. I might allocate that time to someone else, maybe my re-recording mixer or the sound designer, if they want that time. So I haven't really steered away from this change. I have just adopted what's been happening in the industry and what all the tools are available that we can, really use to make it work. So yeah, that's pretty much the outlook that even as an educator I try to tell that, just getting out there and being aware. Slowly gets into the groove, gets you always, in that game of, learning, developing, trying out things. This works for you, does not work for you. And you always have that very personal workflow, but also something that grows on you.